Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. Like I predicted in yesterday's video, Prime Minister Mark Carney is about to have his approval rating sink quite fast. I think a lot of Canadians may have forgiven Carney for not getting a trade deal signed on time because there's just a lot of anti-Trump sentiment in Canada, which means a lot of Canadians are going to be predisposed to blaming Trump for a deal not being signed. But now, in the aftermath of Carney, instead of getting a trade deal signed, recognizing a terror state in the Middle East, you're going to get a lot of Canadians reversing course on Carney. Not like most people who are currently approving of him, but enough that he's going to sink back into the sort of numbers that Trudeau's Liberal government had in 2022 and 2023. Not the sort of crisis numbers that Trudeau had in December of 24, but really mediocre. Maybe leading the Conservatives in some polls and other polls trailing. I predict that's what we're going to start seeing in the next couple of months. Remember when Mark Carney was supposed to be the adult in the room, the man we should give a 4-year term to because he was going to lead Canada through a crisis? And don't worry, he's dealt with men like Donald Trump before, and he knows how to negotiate. And apparently, instead of actually negotiating a trade deal, we are harassing musicians from the United States trying to tour in Canada. And again, we're recognizing a terror state in the Middle East. And yes, Palestine is a terror state. Gaza is run by Hamas, and the West Bank is run by the Palestinian Authority, both of which are terrorist groups. Yes, the Palestinian Authority is more of a government, but their military wing is Fatah, who pays people to kill Jews in Israel. So, yeah, it's a terror state. And now Donald Trump is reasonably upset with Canada. And he may actually just say, I'm not going to negotiate with Canada now on trade because of this really stupid move, because this is undermining both the United States and Israel in the Middle East. Great negotiating tactics, Carney. I can tell you've dealt with people like Donald Trump before. Way more people needed to pay attention to Carney's performance as Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. I know that doesn't exactly have to do with the present situation, but he was the economic advisor for 5 years for Trudeau, and everything sucked the last 5 years of Trudeau's term. It was all bad, to be clear, with Justin Trudeau, but if you were to demarcate when it got really bad, I would say it was when Mark Carney showed up and started giving economic advice to Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland, the then finance minister. Oh, I want to get into some of the details of what's going on here in just a second, but first I do want to remind you guys, hey, if you like the show, make sure to like this video, subscribe if you are not yet a subscriber. We are trying to get to 100,000 subscribers by mid-December of this year, so please subscribe so I don't owe my friends dinner in December. And also make sure to comment if you have any thoughts on the topic. I do like to read through and see what people think, and it also does help us on the algorithm. But here is Mark Carney, again, instead of announcing we have a trade deal signed, talking about recognizing a terror state. This is deeply required because something Israel bad or whatever, because there's a photo of someone in Yemen starving that was then said to be someone from Gaza. And even if there are people starving in Gaza, it's the fault of the terrorist group holding them hostage, not the country who ships in 10 million meals since May. Israel has sent in 10 million meals worth of food into the Gaza Strip, and they are distributing it directly to civilians rather than letting Hamas steal it and just giving it to their fighters. But this is all somehow Israel's fault.
Canada intends to recognize the state of Palestine at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in September 2025. This intention is predicated on the Palestinian Authority's commitment to much-needed reform. Any path to lasting peace for Israel also requires a viable and stable Palestinian state, and one that recognizes Israel's inalienable right to security and peace. Canada intends.
Sorry, but why are we recognizing anything? Just on the idea that the Palestinian Authority may pursue reforms. May pursue reforms means no reforms have yet been made, but it may happen. You know, a group, again, that has a literal pay for slave program where if Your son goes to Israel and stabs a Jewish child to death, your family gets a pension if they go to prison or die. Yeah, sounds amazing. Sounds like we should trust those guys to make much needed reforms. But again, let's not get lost in the sauce when it comes to the Middle East. That doesn't really matter here. That's really more of an American thing. Canada has very little impact on the Middle East, which also raises the question, why are we sounding off about it? Unless it's just Carney trying to signal to his very progressive base that he has inherited from the NTP. Carney, like I said on the whiteboard yesterday, is more scared of losing the far left flank he's inherited from Jagmeet Singh's incompetence than he is scared of losing some of these the boomer age crossover conservative voters who voted liberal in this general election. I know if you're above the age of 60 and you voted in this last election, if you're watching this channel, I know you probably voted conservative, but that was the group that the liberals overperformed with. When in previous elections, the conservatives did far better. Conservatives ended up kind of flip-flopping with the liberals. They did much better with people under the age of 40, and the liberals did much better with people above the age of 55. But anyways, let's look at some of the other stuff going on here, because I really don't want to hear anymore from people who are basically saying, why are you criticizing the Canadian government? Don't you want Canada to succeed in these trade negotiations? And there are people who I think have a good heart, whose minds are in the general right place that they want Canada to succeed, so let's not frag our own side. I'm not fragging our own side by criticizing Canada's stance on trade negotiations. I am pointing out that we are going about this in such a way we will inevitably fail, so criticism is needed. So this is what Donald Trump said in response to Carney's announcement that he both said at a press conference and then posted later on X. Trump on Truth Social says, wow, Canada has just announced that it is backing statehood for Palestine. That will make it very hard for us to make a trade deal with them. Oh, Canada. Yeah, and I know people are going to say, well, Trump was just looking for an excuse to exit the trade talks because he's untrustworthy, blah, 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 blah. I notice every time people tell me that Trump is untrustworthy, so it doesn't really matter what we do. It, it's conveniently he would have already done the thing, but we're always the one who screws it up. You know, we screw up something, but he would have just walked away anyways. He would have lied or something. Well, it's hard to say that when we're always the ones who screw up and just say he would have done it anyways. I haven't seen him do it anyways in a situation where we were doing the right thing. And by the way, the trade talks were already so screwed by this point. We were not willing to talk about supply management. The main thing that Trump wanted at least softened so that some American dairy farmers and chicken farmers could send product into Canada. In fact, getting rid of supply management, as I've said in other videos, would help all Canadian farmers. Yes, some Canadian farmers' profitability would go down, but it's because the current system helps a select few while alienating or keeping a lot of other farmers out of the system. Alberta, 12% of the population, only 7% of the supply management quota. So, take that into account if anyone tells you that we need it or else our agricultural industry is going to fail. Well, apparently it doesn't matter if Alberta's agricultural industry underperforms if it gets to overperform in Quebec. But we were already not doing well in this trade negotiations because we weren't willing to actually put anything on the table to get a better deal. And we're not even willing to make really any threats because we're in no position to make threats. We have more than 10% of the population of the United States, but our economy has the strength of less than 10% of the United States' economy. And then Carney's negotiators. This is rumored, but based on all the other rumors that have come true about what they were saying and doing, I assume this is correct. Instead of trying to negotiate a very quick trade deal, okay, we'll get rid of supply management, but the tariff rate has to go to only 5% or something like that. Instead of doing something like that, we were trying to renegotiate USMCA, which is stupid. You want to renegotiate that monster of a deal and then try and cut Mexico out of it, which is going to require another deal be signed somewhere else. It's dumb. And they brought this up at the last minute. It's like you didn't finish your actual project for a class in university. And 2 days before the deadline, you ask your professor, hey, I don't have anything for you, but how about you wait a week and I'll actually write 2 essays for you? It's like, no, I don't trust you. The thing I can't stand more than anything is the lefty or weak conservative response to this. And when I say weak conservative, I mean the sorts of people like Andrew Coyne. Brian Lilly says anyone paying attention could have predicted this. Mark Carney, the Trump whisperer, strikes again. We were close to a deal 2 months ago and will now head into August as the only major ally without one. And in response to Brian Lilly pointing out this very common sense thing, we have Stephen Mayer here on the left saying, either we are a country with independent foreign policy or a vassal state. Canadians have made it clear throughout our history which they prefer. B, Trump says a lot of things. It's like, again, it's that, well, it doesn't matter because Trump would have done this anyways. Trump says a lot of things. He's probably fibbing about pulling out of the deal, or he would have pulled out of the deal anyways. Guys, okay, we do have independent foreign policy, but America also has independent foreign policy, and they can react to our foreign policy. Nothing is truly independent on the world stage in the sense that your decisions affect other people, and then your decisions make them make other decisions. But for some reason, we think that our decisions should be made in a vacuum. We come out and say something stupid about recognizing a terror state, and the Americans are just supposed to nod and say, oh, okay, well, let's get back to talking about trade. This does matter. This issue is a serious thing. Countries around the world trying to enable a terror state is a bad thing, especially in a trade negotiation when we have not been exactly acting in good faith. I don't want Canada to have a tariff on us. That's why I'm criticizing the government on this front. And going down, I'm just gonna here's another response to what Brian Lilly posted about what Trump posted. This guy, Peter Ratcliffe, forever Canadian, says Brian Lilly, a political eunuch working for a U.S. hedge fund owned paper, wishes to allow the U.S. to dictate Canada's foreign and fiscal policy. Canada is a sovereign nation, and we should not respond to political or economic blackmail from the U.S. or Brian Lilly. Now, this is hilarious because people like Peter Ratcliffe, lefties in the media, the Toronto Star, the CBC, crazy people like Laura Babcock can't get enough of talking about the United States. Every Trump decision is actually fascism coming to America, and Canada needs to stop trading so much with America, and Canada has to boycott Israel, and Canada can't talk to Hungary anymore. We constantly try and police what other countries do. We constantly try and make moral decisions about what we think about that. And by the way, we should say, hey, Equatorial Guinea just killed a bunch of people. Maybe we shouldn't talk to Equatorial Guinea anymore. The problem is that Canada is being hypocritical. At the same time, we also have no moral compass. So even when we do criticize other people, it's usually for something really stupid. Remember, Foreign Affairs Canada, or it's some other institution in the Canadian government, they were advising people who are 2S LGBTQ+ that you can't go first to Florida and then to the entire United States because there's bad stuff happening there. Because biological men cannot compete in women's sports, you as a gay man or lesbian, you can no longer go to the United States. If you're trans, you can't go to the United States because you may not be able to compete in biological women's sports if you're a biological male. That's stuff that we've been doing to the United States. But then you get all these people starting to chirp the US with, well, they can't tell us what to do. We tell them what to do all the time. We tell our tourists not to go there because of this current situation. So this all seems a little bit hypocritical. This is not blackmail. It is countries making judgments of their own on things we have done. Okay. Moving on a little bit more here. And okay, there's some things I'm looking at that I don't want to talk about yet because I know there is I want to talk about in a separate video. This was the statement that Mark Carney released. Again, do we feel like we are winning, guys? Mark Carney, Canada has long committed to a two-state solution, an independent, viable, and sovereign Palestinian state living side by side with the state of Israel in peace and security. My statement on Canada's recognition of a Palestinian state. We may as well recognize Atlantis and say that we should be able to live in peace and harmony with Atlantis, because at least Atlantis being a fictitious place. We could technically create something called Atlantis, and currently Atlantis is not trying to attack other countries with, explosive vests and launching rockets into them. At least Atlantis being a fictitious place is not a terror state. A sovereign Palestinian state living side by side with the state of Israel in peace and security. What kind of pipe dream is that? But regardless, again, this is all, it doesn't matter if it was this or us getting involved in stuff between India and Pakistan, or us getting involved in stuff between, whatever is going on in South America. It would be foolish for us to sound off about anything right now when we are not really a foreign policy player. And now we're going on and stepping on Donald Trump's toes and expecting that that's not going to have trade repercussions. And again, the hypocrisy here is everyone says, well, Trump should just deal with it. Trump shouldn't respond to us, but we respond to him all the time. Apparently, he's the only one who has to hold himself back, but everyone else doesn't. I just want to highlight another post here. This is more so, again, I just want to talk about this because it's so telling. This is something that Josh from the Elevate podcast posted. It's a headline from the Globe and Mail. Josh from Elevate says, quotes the article, quote, almost 600 foreign nationals with criminal records due to be deported are missing. But do you remember the Minister of Immigration telling us they'll all just leave? And so, yeah, you can see the headline there from the Globe and Mail. This is CBSA saying it. It's not some random person saying that it's true. It's the government institutions itself saying it's true. We can't even get rid of people with criminal records that we've already identified from our country. We can't even deport these people. We can't do basic things right. We can't get a budget done. We have a massive deficit while we have supposedly the Goldman Sachs banker running the show. This is why I called Mark Carney during the election, and people would mock it. And partially I was trying to get under people's skin to prove a point. I started calling Mark Carney Mark's Carney, because when you actually look at all of his political instincts, they're all very much to the left. Mark Carney's instincts are left. They are not, corporate banker values. I would prefer, even if I don't love corporate banker values, I would rather have that than what we currently have. And obviously, what I would really like is just small government, socially conservative values. But even if it was like a corporate, socially progressive values, but at least maybe the fiscal side of it's going to be good, I would way rather have that right now. That's what Carney advertised himself as, but he's just not that thing. People can read his book values. People can look at his record as the governor of the Bank of England. Wasn't that good? People can look at his record as the advisor of Justin Trudeau. Any success he's had, like the governor of the Bank of Canada during the housing crisis in 2008 that Canada weathered really well, he only did well during that because he listened to Jim Flaherty. He listened to then Prime Minister Stephen Harper, and he implemented what they told him to implement. And then he got a really big head, and then he went to be the governor of the Bank of England and decided that he actually knows everything, and he started trying to tell the government, as the Bank of England governor, what they should be doing in order to match his policy priorities, and it didn't do very well. They had massive inflation because, in fact, he did the reverse of what he did as the governor of the Bank of Canada in England, because he knows everything now, and he actually very much appreciates the politics and economics of Karl Marx, who he positively name checks in his book Values. Not like gushing and that's his hero, but he has interesting ideas apparently. Okay, so we don't get anything, we don't get any nice things in Canada, but we do get recognition of a Palestinian terror state. So I hope that Yves Engler, the guy running for NDP leadership right now, is very tickled by all of this. He'll probably somehow still find a reason that this isn't good enough because the far left is never satisfied, but for some reason the Carney liberals are trying to satisfy the far left. This is a point I made yesterday, by the way. Let's even just bring in the whiteboard for the fun of it. Live on camera. I talked about this in the innovative research poll that we talked about yesterday. I think it was like right now, in terms of the direction of the country, 56, it might have been 53, but I'm just going to say 56. 56% of people think that Mark Carney is currently putting in the country in the right direction. Now, 2 years into a term, that's a very good stat. More than half of people think you're doing a good job and putting the country in the right direction in your second year of your term. Great work, because the honeymoon is worn off. People aren't just going to think nice things of you because you're new. And if you had that number, that's great. Carney, just a little over 2 months in, this is not a good stat, just a couple months in. And by the way, this is right direction. But you actually then breaks down further into people who think we're like solidly in the right direction and we're somewhat doing the right thing. Solidly it's whatever the other number is, but in terms of people who think we are strongly going in the right direction, and sorry, I need to move the microphone over here so I'm not turning away from it. It was only of people who think we're actually doing a really, really good job, not just somewhat of a good job. It was only 17%. So we have about 17% of people who will not abandon Mark Carney in the aftermath of this, which, when you take that as a percentage of people who voted Liberal in this last election, 43%, is not fantastic. It's like about 40% of Liberal voters are solidly with Mark Carney at all times. The other group of people, when you take this out, like 39%, are somewhat in favor. Do you think that he is going to retain that 39% of people think he's doing a great job after this screw up, after the Palestinian state and trade fiasco? Not a chance. Doesn't mean he's going to lose all of them, but if he even loses 5% of them, if he even loses 6%, he's now down to just half of what he currently has in terms of approval in the direction. And if he loses any more than that, he has like less than half the country think he's doing a great job. And that's not fantastic, considering we are now in effectively a two-party system in Canada because of the collapse of the NDP. There's just two parties that really matter. So if you're running less than half with the NDP and the Greens still taking some of your vote, goodness, that's not great. That's not a great look for the Liberals going into whenever the next election is going to happen. And at this rate, I don't think Carney is going to want one sooner than later, because Pierre Poilievre is doing a good job stabilizing himself, taking more conservative positions as time goes on. He's learned his lesson from the election, in my opinion, although he should fire Jenny Burns. That's one lesson not learned. But he's hardening his stance on immigration. He's actually doing things in order. He's becoming more hawkish on fiscal issues, more hawkish on social issues. Great. Because the problem for the Conservatives in the general election is that they started thinking that we can just go soft, let the Liberals collapse, and then we'll take over. It's like, but the Liberals were on the upswing when Carney took over. You have to go harder at them. You can't just assume that they're just going to, give up and give you the government. I've said it before in previous videos. The Conservatives need to learn how to win elections, not wait for the Liberals to lose the elections, because you're never going to win if you're just hoping the other guy screws up. Anyways, so that should be it for me today, guys. Hopefully you like this video. Hopefully you like me bringing in the whiteboard once in a while. I know a lot of people are saying every time I turn to the whiteboard, the audio went quiet. I usually have the microphone on this side, and I should plug the microphone in on the right side every time I'm using the board. So even if I turn my body, I'm turning my body still towards the microphone. A little bit of housekeeping there on that front. But thanks, guys, for watching. Remember to like the video, subscribe, leave a comment, do all that great stuff. See you guys later.